Wednesdays in the wild. What's up? It's Wednesday.
And it's still wild. Today's episode number 2 of
Church in the Wild. Today we're interviewing some incredible friends of ours named Brad and Haley. Brad is the lead singer of the band Eagle and Child.
Let's Run.
And Haley works for the Global Immersion Project, doing incredible things all over the world in the name of peacemaking. So they're fun, they're wild, and they love Jesus. So check it out. Well, welcome you guys. Thank you so much for being willing to hang out with us for our Wednesdays in the Wild, specifically our Church in the Wild series. We obviously thought of you guys because you are two of the most wild people we know in all of the best uses of the term. So I obviously know you guys, but can you introduce yourself to our students who are watching?
Hi, my name's Haley Mitsui-Davis. Originally from Seattle, Washington, but now I live in San Diego because of this guy. And we do music together and also separately. And I also work for the Global Immersion Project as the director of formation. I love wearing Birkenstocks. I'm wearing them right now.
Ooh. Oh, you need to know that I actually just bought my first pair of Birkenstocks because I'm super pregnant and my feet needed them. So I'm really glad to be a part of this club.
Good, yes, it's an important family to be a part of.
Yeah,
it's good to be here.
My name is Brad Davis. I live in San Diego, which is nearly where I was born. And then, I play music, and I also make a bunch of videos. That's the other thing I do occupationally, video production and music.
I love that.
My hair is way longer than I want it to be. And so I just need to say, like, this is not, I don't want to look like this, but it's quarantine and
I am not the type of wife that cuts hair. No.
Oh, I really get that.
You know, yeah. Sometimes I put it up, but I don't want to be on video with the man bun. I just don't feel like it.
I love that we're really starting with like a foundation of transparency here. It's like that's really important. I love that. And Brad, what is the name of your band that you do music with?
I'm in a band called the Eagle and Child. Yes.
There we go. We love them. So we have a few questions for you guys as we're going through this series called Bones, and we're kind of challenging students in this really weird season of life that as everything's kind of been stripped down to its bare bones, we're kind of evaluating our foundations of things. And one of the things that's really cool to do that with right now has been church, because obviously church has been so different. And so that's why we're doing this series called Church in the Wild, talking about people loving God in their different contexts and what it looks like, even more so than ever before in a lot of ways in our lifetime, for the church body to be kind of on the move in some really powerful ways. So we would love to know, just kind of as we start, how did you guys come to know the Lord?
Can I start?
Well,
Brad's got a way better story than me.
When I have a way better testimony. When I was 8 years old, so my parents, we grew up going to church. When I was 8 years old, we went to a church event called the Power Team,
which none of your kids will know what it is.
None of the kids will know, but this was an event of very muscular people who, in the name of the Lord, would like break stuff.
No
so
way.
There's like a phone book.
This is not real.
I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and they'd tear the phone book or like break ice blocks with their head. It was wild. So I was 8 years old. And I was like, this is, I want this.
When Haley talked about you having a good story, that was not at all where I really saw that.
Mine's like, I would say, Brad had this instant conversion. Mine was more of a slow burn approach. I mean, I grew up in a Christian family and going to church, but I don't have one singular moment of like becoming a Christian or asking Jesus into my heart, but I did ask Jesus into my heart probably 150 times because I was so scared it didn't take whenever the first time. Yeah. And so I think for me, honestly, that's a little bit indicative that I didn't know the Lord. I didn't understand the endless love and compassion and parental, just like, what's the word, just gazing, like when a mother is gazing at a newborn baby. Like, I did not feel that. And I think it wasn't until I was in my 20s that there was an awakening of not just a relationship, but this like deep kind of entwinement with God and me. So I guess that's okay, because I'm happy with where I ended up, but I don't have a power team story.
Oh, I wish we all had a power team
I
story,
know.
but we can't.
But I did feel like there were times when I would go to church with a friend or whatever, when I wasn't really going to church much, or wouldn't necessarily identify as a Christian as a young adult. I would go to church with a friend or whatever, and just sort of felt the desire to come back to it. And part of it was because at the time I didn't enjoy any of the music that I ever heard in church. And I was like, what if like this, I love this pastor, he makes me laugh and he like makes me think about things and take things home. And what if the band before this pastor was as good as the pastor? Oh, and then I was like, so just kind of wanting to invest in the church versus being lazy about my investment in the church or my investment in my own faith. So that's kind of when it became my own, when I was putting pieces together of what I would love for it to look like.
Totally. Being the church, literally. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, so good. Do you feel like, I mean, I feel like the answer to this would probably be yes, based on your story, but do you feel like you had any misconceptions about church growing up? I mean, starting off with the power team ripping phone books is an interesting start. So what do you feel like are some of the misconceptions you had about what church was growing up?
Yeah. I think that's like, the answer is yes. Not everyone is that strong physically. No, but I would say a big one that I had then, which is why I felt okay being lazy about it in my early 20s, was that faith was about later. Like that faith in Jesus and a relationship with God is really only to assure that I don't go to hell. And that is not any basis for a relationship. That's just waiting for something later. And that's not being present or being alive. That's just waiting for something. And I even when I was so bad at school, and I had a really hard time with it, and I wouldn't have gone to college, but was like, I'm probably not even gonna get to go to college because I think the rapture's gonna come.
No
and
way.
I was just kind of like just waiting for the afterlife thing to happen, where I was like, I think that was like a pretty silly mistake, where I'm like, God has like put us here and given us this breath to use, and like, so that was my misconception.
Yeah, I mean, man, so many misconceptions. I think this is like a really great question, and I'm really grateful that you're even asking that. In hindsight, probably one of the biggest misconceptions, and I don't even know if this is totally going to make sense, but is like within the church, what is from the Bible and what's cultural. So American Christianity has a whole culture around it that's unique to the American Christian church that I didn't know how to separate. Because if I didn't fit in with this church because of X, Y, and Z, I thought I couldn't be a part of the church. Because I didn't understand that a lot of these things that were being perpetuated or taught, or the cultures that were created, were not based in biblical truths, but were just on what's popular within Christian culture right now.
Yeah.
So I think I just didn't have the maturity to see that. And I think I wish someone would have noticed that in me, or like pulled out in me, like just helping me distinguish kind of between those things.
So I would love to hear, like, when you guys think of, we're calling it kind of in the wild, but in your jobs, in your everyday life, your everyday routine, even like going to the grocery store, what does it look like for you guys to live out your faith that you've developed since being a student in the wild? What does that look like for you guys?
I think I am always learning how to better see the image of God in every person, and culturally and in some elements of church, we are trained to just like totally ignore certain people, and that's a thing that I don't. Indifference is something that I am very comfortable being indifferent, and I don't think that that's like a quality of God or a quality of the Christian. And so that is like the work is beginning in the shift of my heart and the shift of like my awareness of who I'm interacting with and who around me is suffering, or who around me is getting the wrong impression of who Jesus is, or who the church is, and all of that. So I think that's sort of the foundational thing that I want to be better at, and really just trying to rid myself of indifference to people. And I think that it used to mean I would try to tell everybody to become a Christian. That would be like my way of, and just the amount of, I've never been changed by somebody who I don't, except for the power team, of course, by somebody who I
Obviously.
don't have like mutual love for. And so proximity is where hearts change, and being indifferent towards people keeps you away from them. So
Totally.
So good.
Man, it is such a good question, and I feel like I could take it in like so many different directions. I'm trying to just corral my brain a little bit. But something like we talked about, and Brad actually talks about this at Hume, so maybe you guys have heard it before, but how many Christians are in the world?
2.7 billion.
2.7 billion. It's like a third of the population or something. I mean, it's like a significant number of the world identify as Christian.
Sure.
But from my perspective, if you look at the number of conflict within the world, whether that's interpersonal conflict or, conflict between countries, you wouldn't seem to know that. Like, if Christians are called to be peacemakers in this world, if we're called to love our enemies, like, why, if there are so many Christians in the world, is there so much conflict? And so I think the way I approach being the church in the wild is being able to move towards conflict, but not like trying to win, but trying to be creative and to seek restoration. Again, whether that's on an interpersonal level or a systemic level or an international level, I see my call as a Christian as minimizing the pain in the world. And so, yeah, I mean, it takes so many different forms, and I could like be specific, but I think when I think of it at a high level, like, that's what I see being the church in the wild, is it's moving towards pain and seeking healing in those places, and moving towards the pain in myself and seeking healing there too.
I love that. And for people who are not familiar with the Global Immersion Project, can you mention a little bit about what their mission is?
Yes.
It's the best.
It's the best.
Brad's our number
I'm
one super fan.
It's so good.
So I work for a peacemaking training organization. So a lot of the language I just use is language that we use about, and our goal is to train people of faith to engage the pain in the world in restorative ways. And so we work with people inside of the church and outside of the church, but people who identify as Christian, but don't feel that they have the tools. Maybe they have the tools cognitively, like, oh, God wants me to be a peacemaker, but it's like, what does that even mean? And when we hear peacemaking, I don't know what everyone thinks of, but like a lot of people think of like the hippies in the 60s, or just peace is something way up here that's, you know, beauty pageant people say they want world peace, but it's not anything that's realistically ever going to happen. But we see peace as the holistic repair of relationship.
So now, as you guys are launched into the wild as successful adults, what role does the church play in your life now?
Well, we said we're from San Diego, but we're actually in Albuquerque right now. We're a bit nomadic. We're on a nomadic tour of the country. So we
starting in Albuquerque.
Starting in Albuquerque.
We were going through the alphabet.
Yeah, I believe it's one of the top 2 tourist destinations in the United States.
Right now, because everything else is shut down.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting season of like redefining what is our relationship with the church when we don't have a home base. For me personally, I think it's like the greater membership in the church, in the bigger body of Christ, in not seeing our membership to a congregation, but a membership to a family that spans the whole world.
I've had to, especially if I'm playing with my band, going to different churches and doing things like that, I've had to just sort of realize that God, like my ability to learn about God is way less tied to Sunday than it has been. And that like learning about God through others and about God through nature and like people who send me their favorite sermons. My dad always does, and I like appreciate that stuff. And he's the king of the forwarded email. He is.
I love that.
Now that we are in the wild and we're not attending, or we don't have a set pastor, it's like, in a way, I have this direct relationship with God that I'm having to fine tune.
Yeah.
I'm having to learn how to listen to where the Spirit is moving me. And not because the church is on a series, but because that is what God is laying on my heart. This is the community that God is calling me to move towards. These are the issues that I need to dig into and understand.
I feel like it's funny because you guys are talking about having just moved and how it's kind of like, you know, shaken sort of your view of church right now. But then even for students who haven't been able to physically attend church for the last few months, it's really shaken their view too. But there's something cool about this season of it being shaken because it reminds us in the ways that we can often grow indifferent or grow lazy, that it's not just me showing up on a Sunday morning that makes me a part of church, but it looks like me taking responsibility in my personal walk with the Lord, and also actively loving my neighbors. Like you said, Brad, of figuring out what it looks like for me to see the image of God in those around me, whether I'm at church or not. I think that's so cool. Okay, last question. I love you guys, so I feel like I could talk to you forever, but what is something you wish you could go back and tell your student self about church?
Yeah. That God is the complete opposite of boring. and sometimes church can be boring.
Sure.
Fine. That's fine. But there's like, do not confuse that with like the things of God. And that there's nothing that is more interesting. There's nothing that you could learn more about. God is infinitely learnaboutable.
Yeah.
It's a word I am coining.
It would have saved me a lot of pain if someone would have told me at that age, like, no, ask all the like no question you have is gonna upset God.
Yeah.
It might upset that youth pastor or that Bible teacher, but it does not upset God. And I wish that I would have known that.
All right. Oh, I will walk through fire and I will crawl in mud. I'll never shake the sacrifice of blood. You are the strongest, and you are my promise, Lord. In every darkened dwell, in every shadow den, my God will spread like fire to the meadows. And you are the strongest, and you are my promise, Lord. sense of all the ways you show unending love for us, perpetual, holding the hearts of the broken, seeing the souls of the poor. You hold the hands of the children and lead them to victory's door. Maker of beauty and purpose, you see the stars from above. I am the new transformation, knowing the founder of love. Oh, that you'd include me in your legacy. Oh, that you would call me to your side until our worlds collide. And this drop of light will not vanish on the ground, but it will land in place in your raging sea. Let's run. Let's hear you at home, everybody. To the lonely with the broken hearts, let's run. To the desolate and cast aside, let's run. Let's run to the cynics who misjudge his heart. Let's run.
Well, that was wild. You know, my favorite thing that Haley said was that in this season of her not meeting in an actual building for church, it's really pushed her in her relationship with God. And I love that.
It's so good. And I love what Brad said at the end, that even though sometimes growing up we get this idea that church can be boring, but God is not boring, and we cannot get those two things confused. It was so good.
Now, we don't want you to miss next Wednesday at 7 p.m. for another special guest, so make sure to be there.
But before we go, we've got some contest winners to announce. Oh! The first person to comment the outfit that William Fonda was wearing while doing the Fonda was Kellen Gill. Oh! So you got Chick-fil-A headed your way this week.
And the other winner of the person that sent me a video of them actually doing the Fonda is Allie Eisenman.
Oh!
So good job, guys. You know, if you want to win a prize, you can be there at 7 p.m. Not 7:10, not 7:30, 7 p.m. on Sunday. So be there on Sunday.
We got contests and we got prizes, and we want you to win them. So see you there.